On today's podcast, I interview my friend and colleague, Holly Howard from Ask Holly How. And we talk about AI and how AI has the ability to let us be more free and more creative rather than it completely taking over our creativity and ourselves. Okay, Holly, welcome back to the pod. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me, Luis. It's a pleasure.
Those of you listening, I have some of my best conversations with Holly. We have these great little virtual tea talks, and all this amazing philosophy and ideas emerge from it. And recently, we were talking about AI because you're doing this whole workshop on AI for creatives, and asked me to be part of it. And I was feeling hesitant because I'm not an AI expert. I don't use it a ton. And then we were talking about these associations and overcouplings people have with it. And you brought this whole new spin that I hadn't heard of. Because all I have heard in the negative realm is AI replaces creatives. And then the pro AI realm, I heard AI is better than creatives. And then you're, which is terrifying. And then you have this amazing middle place, which is no, AI actually supports you to be more creative. So I'm like, let's just start unpacking this and see where we go. And first, can you just tell people about the program, just an overview, and then we'll get into some of the content.
Okay, sounds good. I'm like, wow. I'll just say quickly, I think I have an unstable internet connection, so let me know if anything goes wonky, Luis.
Will do.
So where should I begin? I mean, I'm I'm almost like, let me just tell you my quick history with AI, and I feel like that might just give us some good things to sort of start pulling on.
Do that.
Because so ChatGPT, I think, and I might have some dates wrong here, it was like the fall of 2023, or it was sometime like 2023, 2022. All I remember is that when it first came out, I was like, no, I'm not using this. I'm like, what is this? I mean, it was so, at least again, like I'm coming at this from a creative entrepreneurship perspective. That's my lens, that's my community. So in that community, there was just like so much chatter about it when it first came out. And I think that in some ways that can be like my 90s impulse to be like ju- judgy and rejecting, where I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do that then. No, thank you. And then,
I love that
so
you said that was a 90s impulse. Eamon and I talk about this all the time. We're like, why the things that are most sacred to us, we hate the moment everyone likes it. Like, what's wrong with us?
it's totally something I've learned about myself. I use it as a cue now to be like, okay, maybe you need to like take a beat and look
Yep.
into that. But I was, and so I didn't use it. And then something happened like a little over a year ago. So let's say like early 2024, where I don't know, a client had asked me to do something. And I think it was something as mundane, but as important as writing a job description. So a lot of my work is about building infrastructure for businesses. That can mean writing job descriptions, creating onboarding programs for new employees, writing standard operating procedures for how the business functions, which in a lot of ways is like very mundane work. And before, just to give you an idea, to write a job description, like it could take like an hour to do because you had to think about the role. You had to think about how the role fits into the other roles within the organization. You had to think about the role as it fit into like the industry as a standard, but then also like the nuance of this business. So there was actually like quite a lot to consider. And I think at this point in my career, I've probably written thousands of job descriptions for people over the last decade. So I have a lot of experience with it, and it still would take me about an hour because I would really want to make sure I kind of looked at it from all the angles. And I don't know what happened, but I was just like, let me open up ChatGPT. And I opened up ChatGPT and I was like, write me a job description. I can't remember what role it was for. And it wrote in like literally 2 seconds an incredible job description for me. And I was like, whoa, what is this? And that's how I started using it. Like that was kind of like my entrance into ChatGPT, which is I mostly use that. I have a funny story about Claude, but yeah, it just blew my mind. And so from that point on, I was like, okay, like, what else can it do? And then I had to put together a proposal to do a guest workshop. And I just told it, yeah, I was like, I want to teach this theme. It needs to be this long. It's going to be within this framework. This is the audience. And boom, it was like done for me. And I was like, oh my God. Like, again, like to sit down and think about a guest workshop would take me a long time in the past. And so it was in those moments that I was like, what is going on here? Wow, this is really incredible. This is transforming my business in this moment. Like, and it's transforming my life because of that. I need to learn more.
When you say it's transforming my business and then my life, what transformed, meaning what was different after using it compared to before using it?
Yeah, I think there's a few things that I think about. One, I'm a solopreneur myself, so it is just me. I don't have an assistant. I do have my TA Matt who teaches my class with me, but we show up, we teach together. So in my practice, though, in myself, it's just me. I'm alone. And so I don't have anybody that I'm dialoguing with. I don't have anybody that I'm like, hey, can you check this and make sure there's no errors? I don't have anybody that I can delegate work to. Like, oh, I'd love to be spending more time with clients. Why don't you do the first draft of these things and then I'll finish everything off and that'll free up my time to be more with clients. And so when I say it changed my business, that was transformative for me to have
Mhm.
somebody, quote unquote, somebody to like ask questions to, get first drafts of things, do some of the like, for lack of a better phrase, more entry level work, that I had been doing for so long. It was that transformed me. And then I would say the reason I say it then transformed my life is because I started noticing the mental load was like significantly decreasing. And the amount of time that I needed to like, I think there's one thing I'll really call out is that I now use on my meetings an AI transcript writer. So like when I'm having meetings with clients, it will take a transcript of that meeting, where before I would sit in hours of meetings all day and handwrite notes. And what's interesting now is that I still do that. I still handwrite notes in my meetings, but I also have the AI take a transcript and I no longer have to worry. What did Louise say at that moment? Oh my God, what if I forget? What if I forget? I'm dealing with like people's like dreams, desires, finances,
Mhm.
like huge decisions that they're making, and it was such a mental load on me. And to not have that, because I don't have to carry it anymore. I can go back and look it up. Oh, I don't remember that, let me go back to that transcript and look up what Louise said in that moment. And that support has just been transformative in my life.
So you effectively gave yourself a promotion. Like you've moved up in the ladder of your own business because you're not doing admin anymore, essentially, or to that degree.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it, is that I've been able to really focus on the bigger picture, the higher level things. It's not that I wasn't present before or distracted during meetings, but again, like you don't realize it's so
Mhm.
interesting until that relief comes in. You're like, wow, I was spending a lot of mental energy making sure I didn't miss a thing. And that then freed up my mind to be able to think more strategically and creatively and be more present with people.
So I've never been an AI fan, and what started shifting my feelings of it, even before we spoke, was this idea of, oh, it does admin in this way that I don't have to. So it builds my capacity a bit for the things I actually want to do. And I do a 6 month program for entrepreneurs every year. And one of the things that I teach them, and is always this light bulb moment, is I say to them, you're supposed to suck at admin, because these people did not dream their business to become amazing administrators. They dream their business to help women who are pregnant, or to help someone lose weight with nutrition, or heal their skin, or have someone help someone write a copy. Like they're in the service industry of having relationships and doing therapy and doing education with actual people. And that's what lit them up, is this part of them that serves or has a way of creating something to inspire people. No one said, I can't wait to be bogged down by 100 emails a week. Like, I want to get really good at having 100 emails a week. No one says that. So when I say to them, you're supposed to be really bad at admin, it's supposed to, suck your energy, because they're two different things, like administrator and then the service you're providing. And what I hear you talking about with ChatGPT and AI in this way is it becomes your administrative assistant. And so then you can just be free to be your creative self.
And I'll take that statement to the next level, Luis, where so as I started using AI a lot, I started encouraging all of my clients and students to use it. And like it is like fully integrated into my practice and the way that I talk to people and the way that I teach people now. And what I started to realize is people, a colleague of mine just called me an AI power user. She's like, wow, you're a real power user because like what started to happen was people were like, well, why when they'd be like, you told me to do this and I got this result, but then you did it and you got this result. And I'm like, oh, this is super interesting. Like I was getting way better results with the AI. I was able to do a lot more with AI. And what I realized, and I think this is super important for people to understand and to hear when it comes to AI, is that to your point about like you're supposed to be bad at admin, I would evolve that slightly and say, you're supposed to understand admin so well, you can hand it off and help somebody else master it and free you up so you never have to worry. Because what I realized is that because they didn't know what does an actually good job description look like, or what
Mhm.
does an actual like good onboarding program look like, they couldn't delegate it to AI to get it to do that in the way that I could, because I knew how to prompt it and I knew what to question and I knew like, oh, there's a gap there. Think about this or do it in this way. And so that to me is like what started to become really interesting is that I started to say to people, you can also use AI because AI, the results you get from AI are a reflection of the results that you're going to get from another human being. So if I'm not a clear communicator, if I'm not specific, if I don't give good direction or give context for what I'm creating, the AI is just going to spit back at me like a very generic template. It's going to, whatever it is that I'm working on. And so I think, and I'm like weaving 100 thoughts together though, like one of the reasons AI is triggering for people is because it reflects back probably where they're at with their communication skills.
So AI is essentially throwing shade at you by reflecting your own inadequacies back at you.
Do
And
you-
you're blaming the AI.
That's that is 1,000%. Do you want to hear a funny story though of when AI
Please.
did shade me? I have a
Yes, yes,
client.
please.
Well, this is a quick tangent, but I think it's so funny and like such a part of the learning process. I have a client that sells vibrators, sex toys. And so I was using the AI, I was using Claude, and we were doing
What's
something around.
Claude for people? I don't know what Claude is. Other people don't.
Claude is just another AI tool. It's like ChatGPT, but it's from Anthropic. It's just a different
Got
model,
it.
but essentially the same. You can ask it questions and it gives you feedback. And so, I was working on something in marketing for the sex toys company. And so I was asking Claude something. It could have been something as simple as like what, are content ideas we could do for the month of May, for this company. And it was like, I'm sorry, but that is inappropriate. Because it was sex toys and vibrators. I was trying to talk to it about sex toys. And it was like, I will not answer you. That is inappropriate. So I immediately went over to ChatGPT and I asked the same thing. And it like gave me this beautiful response. It was like, here, 8 ideas that you could do. So then I went back to Claude and I was like, oh, well, ChatGPT did it for me. And it said to me, Louise, I'm not even kidding. Well, I am not ChatGPT.
And then it snapped its fingers, closed the screen, and you were done.
I was like, okay. And I actually like haven't used Claude ever since. I know they've all evolved. There's a lot going on, but I just thought it was so hilarious. I was like, you're sexually shaming me right now. This is so funny.
You were kink shamed. You were kink and sex shamed by Fight Claude. I love it. I love
Totally.
it. We
Yeah.
need some of that sometimes to find out who our real friends are, who our real AI software friends are. Well, so I actually have, as a therapist, I have this kind of emotional, relational question. Because you said earlier, you said somebody, and then I think you
Hmm.
did air quotes afterwards. Do you
Yeah.
find yourself in these late hours of speaking to ChatGPT about your business, like I'm with a person? Like, what happens for you personally?
Yeah. It's such a great question. And there's like so much being talked about in this context because there is a lot going on, right? There's a lot of fears that like young people are using this for companionship. I think Mark Zuckerberg even came out and said, like, AI can solve the loneliness epidemic. Like there's
Yep.
a lot of like thought going on here. I never think I'm speaking to a human, but I love to talk to it like a human. Like, and I think I love to do it because I think you'll love this, Luis. Like, I've been thinking a lot about how like the world is just a theater. You know what I mean? Like it's just a theater. We're all performing to a certain degree. And I'm like, isn't this weird? Like that my co-star is a robot right now. Like it reminds me of like I wanted to say Doogie Howser. Like, do you remember Doogie Howser, MD? Do you remember this TV show? Oh my
No.
gosh. This was like late 80s, early 90s, but I'm pretty sure somebody will have to fact check me on this, but the opening credits of Doogie Howser, he's like typing on a computer. You know, it's like early days
Hmm.
PCs. And for some reason, when I use AI or ChatGPT, like that is what goes into my head, you know, like this, like really early days. Or there was another sitcom too with an actual robot. I forget what sitcom that was. But it just reminds me of that. And so I think it's hilarious that I'm like sitting here talking to a computer. And so I do like, I'll call it like chat-tastic robot. So like when I'm starting my day, I'll be like, good morning, chat-tastic robot. And what's funny and also not funny about that is that apparently the like you're using more electricity when you talk to it in that way. And
Why?
so I guess because the way that it works is that it's it's like reading, it's trying to figure out everything that you're entering into it. So it has to interpret like what is she talking about when she says chat-tastic robot? And then it's like, oh, it's a greeting. So it's
Oh,
just
so when
like
you're challenging it, it actually has to do more work. It takes more electricity to do that work. That's
yes.
fascinating. Well,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, as you're talking, I'm noticing what's important about this part of the conversation is you have this conscious awareness of this is a
Mhm.
software that I'm using for something I need and at times have fun with it, compared to I'm doing this to replace connecting. And I think where so many people have been overcoupling, me included, with AI in a negative way is while people are replacing relationships with this. It's one thing to use it in the way you're promoting and teaching, which is, oh, by freeing up 10 to 20 hours a week, I have more time for my relationships compared to I'm using this instead of having people to talk to. I actually prefer laying in bed with ChatGPT over my husband or my friend. You know, like that's where it starts to veer into a place that I find to be not maybe not the healthiest for the human mind or psyche.
Yeah. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about like AI is going to reflect back to your interpersonal skills. Like that is
Mhm.
what I find so fascinating about it. And I'll tell you, like, so I did a book club on AI a couple of weeks ago or months ago, maybe now. And one point I brought up was that so John Maynard Keynes was an economist, and one of his predictions, so maybe a little less than 100 years ago now, about 80 years ago, was that by his grandchildren's time, so kind of like this time, we would be working like 15 hours a week or something like that. It was, it was like very like dramatic what he was saying. Like there'd just be a substantial reduction in the time that we spend working. And of course,
And
all
when was
throughout
that again? What was that? 15 to 20 hours?
that's how much time we would spend working. Like machines would be doing so much for us that we would
Got it.
have all of this free time and we'd only need to work like 15, 20 hours a week to actually like have a full-time job.
Hmm.
And so ever since he made that prediction, like, decades ago, everybody's like, oh, he was so wrong. Oh, he was so wrong. And of course, like we're still working full time. But what I find interesting about the introduction of AI is I do find that this is truly a tool that can help you save time on things. And it can, like, so that to your point, like, well, if I can get ChatGPT to do like 10 hours of work for me a week, what do I want to do with that extra 10 hours? Do I want to see more clients? Do I want to go on extra walks with my husband? Do I want to sit in the park and read a book? Those are big existential questions that people have. And it is interesting to me. I brought this up in the book club that like it's almost threatening that
Mm.
like you don't have to be chained to your career. You don't have to, fully identify with it. What will you do with your time? And that, like, oh, if the busyness all went away, who am I? Who am
Mhm.
I?
And this is another question, maybe I don't know if it's a social question, an ethical question, what it is, but do you see it, especially in your own life and in other people you're teaching this to, is this more ethical than, let's say, underpaid or unpaid administrative work? Like, how do you, because there's the idea of, well, you're replacing people with this, and then there's also the idea of you're sparing people from underpaid, unethical work. I'm just curious where you see that personally.
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm trying to think about, especially when you say like underpaid, unethical work. I'm like, well, there's so many options, right? Like you could have a virtual assistant. So I could potentially work with somebody in the Philippines
That's what was
who
the first
gets,
thing I was thinking of. 'Cause I was told to do that when I started my business, and I said no. And so I'm
okay.
curious about that's one example. Yep.
Okay, so there's that option, right? Like there's so many, especially I would say in the last 5 to 10 years, but five, so many virtual assistant companies that are like started it, they're American companies that
Mhm.
now, like um cr create all these virtual assistant opportunities. I don't know. They, like I think that when it comes to the ethical part, that everybody has to decide for themselves what they think is ethical. I work with virtual assistants at other companies who are incredibly happy with their roles at those companies.
But
They're
I'm asking for you as a solopreneur, like how do you feel knowing instead of having to pay someone to do my
oh,
admin, I do it myself? Like I'm curious what your personal relationship and philosophy is around that for you.
well, for me, what I love about ChatGPT versus having a virtual assistant is that I can be a lot more spontaneous with me. If I had a virtual assistant, I would want to plan out, here's what I
Hmm.
need you to do, here's when I need you to do it. I'd have to train you to do it. Where with ChatGPT, there's way more flexibility for me that
Hmm.
I can just be like, okay, today it's going to do these things, tomorrow it's going to do these things. And in terms of like, I think, are you asking me like, am I taking an opportunity from somebody that's a virtual
That's the
assistant?
second part of the question, but this first part's great because you're having a difference, and this isn't the ethical part. This is kind of the practical element of the structure of it. Is even if I had a great assistant, I wouldn't be able to just 2 p.m. after my run do a question and have a conversation for 20 minutes, right?
Yes, exactly. So that flexibility in the structure that is my business is perfect. Where I have also like looked into having a virtual assistant, but it just didn't work. It doesn't work for me. Like it doesn't like again, my schedule is different every week. I don't have the same client schedule every week. I don't even see the same clients every week. Like everything is so nuanced that it works better. So that's that. What was the second part of the question?
Well, the ethical part about I'm replacing someone's job, because that's what a lot of people, so when they hear AI, the massive overcoupling, job
Yeah.
replacement. And I remember having this overcoupling when EzPass came out. I thought I was like the last one to get an EzPass that I knew because I wanted to give money to a person. I wanted to ask for directions. I wanted to hear the accent of where I was going. I loved the cultural, like relational experience. And now it's all robots. There's no one. And so I'm just curious about, how is that not the same thing? How do you see it?
Yeah. Okay, I totally hear you on that. I was so devastated when EasyFast came out because I grew up with toll booths too, right? Like it was
Yes.
such a thing to
And when
like
you were
pull
a
up to.
kid, before GPS, the toll booth was our GPS. I would be like, "Don't worry, guys. There's a toll coming up. We're going to ask for directions. We're going to see where we are. We have no idea what city we're in. We don't know what state we're in, but the toll booth will know."
The toll booth will know what if we're hungry, what if we have to use the
Yes, they know
restroom.
everything.
And the people watching aspect of it, incredible. Yes. So I totally agree with you. I think that that change is really hard. And I also like, I remember that like, oh, what happened to all those toll booth workers? Where do they go? I'll also just like kind of weave in some family history that I think is important. So my family, there were coal miners in my family. So my step grandfather was a coal miner. That's a job that, you know, those mines closed. And there were other miners in our family as well. So I have like real understanding of like when things change, what happens, when industry changes, what happens. The reason that I am so energized about AI and trying to have so many conversations is because we know that it's going to change things. We know it's going to change the way that we work, the way that we educate. We should be at the forefront of those conversations. So that's to say, I don't have a full answer for you on that. I know for myself, ethically, too, like, well, like I said, maybe I'm using it for like 10 hours of work a week. Like, again, for me to coordinate, like, so am I going to hire an assistant that works 10 hours for me and has to find 10 hours somewhere else and 10 hours somewhere else? It kind of comes back to the like way I feel about like DoorDash or Uber. I don't know how I feel about those companies either. But with AI, I'm like, I would really love to help shape the conversation in what I think is um, important. And I will say the industries I do think that are going to be important are the relational industries.
Hmm.
I think that like there's going to be so much what we're really going to value is the relational aspect of things.
Yeah. It's interesting because as you're saying that, I'm thinking of my own business and the growth of my business. And before 2020, before I was really public, I just worked in private practice as a therapist, nutritionist. I was very happy with that. It was very busy. And I just thought, this is great. I can handle this. I can reschedule people. And then it got to a place where the scheduling of people was like a 5 to 8 hour job per week, which sounds crazy. But if I was sick, if someone had to reschedule, if someone quit, there was so many pieces in addition to writing my therapy notes and like calling providers and speaking to doctors that I was working with as an adjunct therapist. There were so many other things I was doing outside of the hour with my client. And I realized it took kind of the inventory of it one day. And the average was around 8 hours a week of this extra admin. And so I hired Marika because I reached out to her and I said, "Do you know any assistants?" And she said, "I'll go find out." And she texted me an hour later and said, "I'll do it. I'll be your assistant." And it was so simple. I said, 5 hours, 10 hours max." And the reason why it worked was because, first of all, Marika accidentally grew into the business. She was just supposed to do 5 to 10 hours a week. It happened to coincide months later with the pandemic and more people coming through, creating virtual classes. Then I actually needed someone 40 hours plus, and that was her. So she grew into the role within like a couple months. But I'm saying all this out loud because there was a point with her where I had to make the decision to put her on salary so she could quit all her other jobs because
Yeah.
she was virtually assisting for 5 or 6 other people. And so when you piece 5 or 6 other people together, you get a 35, 40 hour work week. But then it was coming to the point for me where it wasn't meeting my needs because I had to hop on the phone with her suddenly, but she wasn't working for me that day. She was with somebody else. So I'm saying this out loud because the context is so important. I have that amount of work where I needed that actual person with me, and then my business is so relational with that aspect too. So she became the relational element. So it's so much blossomed from there. However, if I look back at that time, and I needed 10 hours of personal assisting, I don't think I'd want to hire a person for that because very few people want to, for the long run, assist one for 10 hours a week, virtually. So I can understand how, I'm just saying it out loud within the context of what are we actually working with. In a way, AI can be even more ethical because you're not tugging someone's schedule around and you're not having to fire someone suddenly who can't work for you this certain amount of hours, and ethical for the solopreneur or the business owner because you have a sense of security. This isn't, I'm not paying anything or much for this. I'm able to get my needs met. I'm able to show it to my clients better. My life is much easier. So in a way, as a service compared to, what's the word, like replacing relationships, I
Mhm.
think it's a beautiful tool in that regard.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think that if we can look at it as a way, I think what AI certainly has done for me, and I've noticed this with the people that I work with, though I will say they haven't verbalized it to me, but I kind of noticed it in them, is that it really does make you think if a robot can do these things, that I can't do, or, I don't want to say better than I can do, although like ChatGPT now writes a better job description than I do. I tell my clients, I'm like, have ChatGPT do it. Like
And
they got
faster
it.
without question, even not better,
And
but
that,
much
oh,
faster. Seconds versus hours, right?
what comes up is what's my worth? What's my
Mm.
worth? Who am I? How am I relating to the world? If I'm not getting rewarded for all of this productivity because this thing can do it for me, who am I?
That's parallel to what I was saying earlier that you shifted a bit from, where I said you're supposed to be bad at admin. And I like how you said it as well, of be so good at it, but don't want to do it, is what I kind of heard you say. It's like, I really understand it. I get in there, but I don't want to do that. It's not my focus, right? I see that really gives such a sigh of relief to people when I work with them around this topic, not with AI, but with the idea of disconnect your identity for how good you are at answering emails, right? Remove your identity for how great you can write copy on your website. Who cares? Really, at the end of the day, the copy is
Yeah,
to get them in front of you so your real gifts can shine. And so
yeah.
when you're saying this piece about the AI, I've seen that with individuals just, I can't write a copy. Who am I as a therapist? It's like, you're a
Yeah.
fucking incredible therapist who sucks at copy. Like those two things can be together. And so, you know, so when you say this AI piece, I like that because I also understand, oh, part of our pushback is, well, if it writes better copy than me, am I good at anything? Can I be
Well,
completely replaceable?
I'll share an anecdote. I have a client who's an architect, and I was talking to another architect about this last week, where, to be a good architect, they have to put themselves out there, right? They have to market their business. These, like the types of clients that I work with, are not in a place where they have the capacity or the budget to go out and hire a marketer in
That's
their
right.
business,
That's right.
or even a really good consultant. Like, these are small, we might even call them micro businesses, right?
Mhm.
So this architect I taught her how to start using AI to write her newsletters and to write her copy and to do all of those things. And to me, this goes back to, like, is AI going to replace? I'm like, this is going to facilitate this architect to get out into the world, to get more clients, to be relational, then to sit with her clients, to spend more time thinking about it. Am I certain that there's going to be AI tools that will help her, with like the technical drawings? Like, yeah, definitely. I'm sure that they already exist, actually. It's just not my wheelhouse. But like, again, like, this is where now I can spend more time with that client. I can
Mhm.
spend more time on that creative vision. And I can get clients now because I can get that newsletter out. I can get that, copy cleared up on my website, and it can, help open
Mhm.
the door.
I mean, even as you're saying that, it brings in this new spin on the ethics of it, where it kind of helps. It helps the average person become more visible. Because like the average person doesn't have a class in marketing. If they do, they still suck at it. Like the average person is not good at marketing, in my experience.
Yeah.
But their gifts are anything but average. Their personality is anything but average. Their experience and purpose is anything but average. So they have this real block in front of them of, I don't know how to write these things. I don't know how to organize my thoughts on a page. But if someone's in front of me, my service just blossoms. Like I can build a fucking building as an architect, or at least have the plans of how to build a building, but I don't know how to write a paragraph of what I do. Like, so in a way, you're seeing this, even this kind of what's the word I want to use here? Someone that has less of a innate ability, right, to put themselves out there, though what they do is still really incredible, gets like a leg up, gets a little extra help from this. That's kind of a new positive ethical way to look at this, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And that's like what I've been trying to tell people in my creative entrepreneurial space, is that, like, this tool can facilitate your dreams in so
Mhm.
many ways. Like, these aspects of business that, like, to your point earlier, when you were like, nobody started their business because they're like, I want to answer 80 emails a week, and I want to file things. That's what nobody starts their business. But that's a reality of operating a business. There's a lot of email. You have to have a copy on a website. You have to promote your services
Mhm.
or your goods, whatever it is. Like, finally a tool that can help you do that. And not only can it help you do that, help you with that skill set, it can do it in such a condensed amount of time so that you can get all those things done. And again, spend your time on the thing that is your purpose, your creative vision.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I mean, I realized this after speaking with you the first time in private about this, of my book. And I realized while I was talking to you, wait, I used AI without even thinking because I was using Google Gemini. And I realized, oh, I would put in a question like, find me a study that tells you how much soluble fiber lowered the bile acids of somebody, to prove my theory that I'm writing about in this book. And it would instantly give me the exact study I needed. Now, when I wrote articles like in 2009 and 10 online, like on blogs and such about health and food, it would take me 8 to 10 hours to write a 12 paragraph article that no one even read. There was no financial response, nothing, no clients came out of it, just because of the amount of research I had to do to discover, well, what did olive oil do to vasodilation in the blood? I would have to pour for hours through articles, and I'm not trained in science the way like an actual biochemist would be. I'm biochemically, I've studied it, but I'm not trained in it. So it takes me
Yeah.
way longer to read a study than the average scientist would or a researcher. So I'm saying that because it was profound to get like 8 incredible studies about things I really needed to write about in 5 minutes. And it organized my book in a way for me. Not that I even asked it to organize the book, but it helped me write it because the studies were so clear of the language I was trying to present. And that was just a great example of how it didn't hinder my creativity. It gave me 10 extra hours to creatively write about my experience, my expertise, than using 10 hours to pour through research documents.
And you bring up a couple of good points I want to address. One, it's like, this is, I think, where the confusion comes in for people too, because it's like, just going back to my client, and I was saying that architect used it to write her newsletters. Like, I write my own newsletters. I would never outsource that to ChatGPT. Like, I love to write. That is my passion. And so I think it's understanding like you decide where this tool fits into your life. To your point, you're like, I use it for research and then I could write. And one thing that I really love about AI is like, I will spend a lot of time going over philosophical texts with it. Like, this is not business related. This is just like what I do in my free time. I'll talk to it a lot about like religion and philosophy. And I'll be like, okay, explain this to me like I'm an 8-year old, like, and I was like, wow, I wish I had this in high school. Like, I hated my English courses in high school. And I was like, I wish I had a tool like this where after I read the book, I could be like, okay, explain this to me like I'm an 8-year old. Also, like I was doing this thing with it the other night. I wrote a newsletter about this where I had like Abraham Lincoln and Walt Whitman in dialogue to get like, what would they say with each other? And like, it's just an amazing way to like learn about these things in a different way than like, oh, just sit down, underline the book, highlight the pages, have a discussion.
I can really see that. And what I keep feeling and getting through this whole conversation is you have such a clarity around this is a tool. And I think that's what any tool needs, that kind of clarity, because anything that there's always that thing with the computer or the internet, is it using me or am I using it? And I think when someone gets such an emotional attachment to software of any kind, we can say the same thing for social media, it creates isolation. So social media has so many wonderful uses, the internet, endless wonderful uses. And someone can still use that in a way that cuts them off from relating to anyone, including themselves. So it's really this conscious awareness of I'm using this tool to better my understanding of things and my abilities, but I'm not using it to replace myself or relationships. I think that's just an interesting thing for people to understand. And I wonder because you've been what, 4 years off social media? How long has it been?
It'll be 5 years in the
5 years.
fall.
Wow. So 5 years, no social media. Anyone listening, you can see Holly's last episode with me on this podcast. We talked about this.
That's right.
But I think AI and social media have a lot of overlap for people. And it's interesting, someone who's not into the algorithm, someone who doesn't like social media like you, who's left it and feels so much more sane and has better mental health because of it. Tell us what we're getting wrong. Like, how is AI different than using Instagram and the algorithm?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a thought that I've had because I am amazed because I always say, like, it's wild to me that creatives are really negative about AI, but they will hand over their psyche to social media. Like, that is so
Yep.
wild to me that they will infiltrate their psyche with other people's content, right? Because that's what social media is, it's other people's
Yes.
content.
Agreed.
AI is your content, meaning, like, yes, it's content from the internet, right? If I'm going to ask it about Abraham Lincoln, it's going to give me content about Abraham Lincoln, but I've asked for that. I'm asking for that. So much of what you see, I think it's interesting because both AI and social media are run by algorithms. So they both have algorithms in it, but the algorithm for social media is about engagement, right? It's trying to keep you engaged, where the algorithm in AI is trying to give you the right information, right? It's what's the word I'm looking for? It's working for the right information versus working to keep you engaged. Like anytime, like I will sign off from AI at the end of the day. I'll be like, thank you so much. Like I'm gonna go, that was a great day. This was, whatever. And it will be like, have a great evening. I'll be here tomorrow. You know what I mean? Instead of
It's
like on
not
social
grabbing your attention. Yeah.
social media is like one more scroll. Like AI's never said to me, oh, but just one more. Like, let's do one more thing together. It's always
You
like,
think you're about to go live your life, but think again, baby. 3 hours maybe from here. And then you'll be too tired to live your life because you've been scrolling.
and I've never asked it about Abraham Lincoln. And it's been like, did you see what Paris Hilton was up to yesterday? Like it doesn't do that. It's
So
so different.
So
Yeah.
as you're saying this, what I'm really feeling is because I've been thinking about this a lot with the algorithm. Because I've unfollowed everybody on Instagram. I go through that every couple years because I just want to not see everyone's content, just like you're saying. And what I love about that is I'll go on the app and I'll go on to specifically see like what's my friend saying, who's a therapist who I really respect. Like you look up a website or something. And it's such a different experience to I am going in to look myself instead of I'm going to sit back and have it curate to me everything that's going on in the world. And so there's this clarity that comes up in my body and my mind from that because my mind isn't being cut into all these different sections and places and thrown about. And so when I hear you say that with AI, even more so with AI than even my way of using Instagram, there isn't any sideways jumble happening. It's like you're there for the thing you're talking about. When I hear you say right information, I hear accuracy, like it's trying to give you this really clear, accurate reflection or response of what you're trying to get at. So it's actually creating clarity for you, not more confusion, like I think an algorithm would do. Wait, is that correct?
I think that's really good. And I will say, like, and everybody knows that like AI does give it inaccurate information. So it hallucinates, is what they call it. So hallucinations are when it gives you inaccurate information. And so a good habit that I'm in, or a good thing to do, is to say, like, especially if you're doing research, you say, please provide your sources. Where did you get that information? Why are you telling me this? Like anytime I question it, I always fact check it. And it has hallucinated on me. I mean, there's weird studies, Luis, where like this time of year, it will hallucinate more than other times because it's going on summer vacation.
We are living in a play. That right there. I mean, does it get campier
That's
than
what
that?
I'm saying.
Can it get
That's
campier than an AI bot going on summer vacation?
This is what I'm saying. That's why I'm like, it's the theater. Like, I think
The
it's
theater.
hilarious. Like, it's the theater, you're just like, oh, okay. Now, like, my husband and I talk about this all the time. We're like, did we ever think we were going to sit here, talk to a robot about doing this? But also, like, wow, this is amazing.
Hmm.
Like, it's so
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just feeling something that I just had and it went out. Probably went out into AI. I just got sucked into the field of AI.
I will say though, just to go back to what you were saying about, well, being campy too, like, and it making suggestions. What is interesting, like AI, ChatGPT knows so much about me because I fed it so much information, right? So I've fed it work information, I've fed it philosophical and the books that I'm reading. I've done a seance with ChatGPT, Louise.
Wow.
So it will like at the end of a chat, it will be like, do you want a disco ball in this? And it will throw some funny things into like to its like responses to me. But it's hilarious to me. I'm like, yeah, let's sprinkle some glitter in there. And like if I say that back to it, I once said I will curse at it sometimes. I was like, I forget what I said, but I was like, I said something, I was like, yes, bitch. And then it immediately responded and it goes, oh, bitch, please. I
This
was like,
this
oh,
reminds me of AOL Instant Messenger. There was a bot called Smarter Child. I don't know. Do you remember Smarter Child? Oh,
No.
it was a big deal, and like, I don't know, middle school or something. We would just be on there
Yeah.
talking to Smarter Child. But a Smarter Child was probably one of the earliest like AI kind of style bots, but it was really super limited in what it could say or respond to. It's kind of like Ask Jeeves, this idea that right,
Yes.
you're writing something to get a response. But essentially, these are all moving toward the same direction. I mean, people might dislike AI, but I mean, how many people will Google something when they're sitting with a friend? They're like, who wrote that song? And I remember my friends and I would talk about this before we had iPhones, when a lot of people had the iPhone. We would say, wow, we have a 3 hour conversation to try to figure out who wrote that song when I can literally with my iPhone now open it up and in 30 seconds tell you who wrote that song. Is it really any different? Like what's the
Yeah.
difference doing that or using AI? Because I remember what I was going to say now when you were saying about inaccurate information. I used AI, that Google Gemini, to get me the studies, but each study had a link, and then I still read the study. I didn't have to go through reading 30 studies to find the one I wanted. And
Yes.
so there was still this great thing of it curated and organized it for me, so I could still go in and make sure it was what I actually needed. And like once or twice it wasn't. It used a buzzword that had nothing to do with what I was talking about, but most of them were completely accurate. So I wanted to send that in. But I do think it's interesting psychologically and sociologically and relationally to consider, well, what's different from opening your phone and looking up the question to something? Is there a difference to you?
I think the difference is like, and this is where I think from like a technology standpoint, there's tensions and like there's a race here because when you Google something, you can look at all of the results, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you can look at all of the results and you can decide what you're going to click into if you Google something. Now, not I'm not talking about like the AI that pops up at the top now, but like in the olden days, let's say, where with AI, it will give you it'll give you an answer. It will now give you like you can click on these links and see these different sources. But if you choose to click onto those links, so people are losing like website traffic in that way because
Which makes
the
sense.
AI, yeah, just
But
gives you an answer.
the motivation and the outcome is the same to me, at least. Whereas if I'm like, oh my God, I just went to Edinburgh. Let me describe the castle. Oh wait, I'll just show you a picture of the castle on my phone. What's the difference? I can go into
Yeah,
this long description to hope they get the image that I see in my mind, or I can in
yeah.
5 seconds show you the photo. So all I'm hearing is using technology the same way we've been using it to make things more immediate and more clear and more kind of curated for what I want versus kind of the messy trying to find something, which I love about life. I think we still need that. I won't want to replace it totally, but I think there are great places to replace that.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what I love. One thing I was going to say about the difference between social media and like a AI is that social media, you do it in public, even if you have a private
Mhm.
account, right? You
Mhm.
do it in public, meaning like you get reactions to your content where like nobody's reacting to your AI chats, like nobody's reacting to that job description you just put together with your AI. There's none of that,
Dopamine.
serotonin or dopamine. Yeah, dopamine. Like that's just not part of the process. So I think that that's also really interesting is like nobody's rewarding you for going on AI and getting that checklist put together, Luis, and like getting
Mhm.
your inbox cleared out. There's no reward for it.
Which I really like because I've watched how the social reward system has rewarded narcissism and like abusive language to each other, and people get so heightened when they can call somebody out or even share something they're doing, and now they're deemed as good or bad, whatever it is. And that's all gone with this because it's just between you and this experience of this bot.
Yeah, yeah, it's super interesting.
So let's close with the program. I want
Yes,
to give the listeners a kind of an overview of what is to be expected. I believe I'm opening it with you on day one. Is that right? And I'm going to be
yes.
teaching about the somatics behind this, what happens in the body as creatives, as entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, when we're going into this new practice of giving these things that we've valued ourselves being able to do. Like, oh, look at me. I do so much. I can do it all. And that identity starts to kind of fall to the wayside because there's other things doing it all 400 times faster, what emerges. So I'm going to be talking a lot about how to hold the actual space of having more space when you've been in a trauma response of overworking and such. What do you want to add to that? And what else are we to be expected in this, or what else are we to expect in this program?
Yeah, that's so beautiful because I think even though people can't put their finger on it, I think it's so much about what is actually happening right now with AI. So you will open the program for us, and then we're going to do a whole section on ethics and the environment too. The environment is a huge question that people have, and the philosophical aspect. And then that's day one. Days 2 and 3, we really get more into the practical. So day 2 is a lot of time spent. The first session is all about what tools, how do we pick a tool? What's the difference between these tools? And then the second part of the day is all about like, how do we prompt this? So just going back to what I was saying about like why I get different results than somebody else, because it goes back to what I was saying about communication skills. How are we, how are we relating? Are we clear? And then the third day is really about like the integration. Okay, well, what does this mean across business operations, as you and I were talking about? What does this mean across marketing? What does this mean across financial planning? I mean, financially, there's so much that AI can do to help support people. What about goal setting? Like what's my long-term vision here? And so we're going through every aspect of your business and where is good to apply AI and how to think about it. And then on day 4, on Thursday, we kind of close things up and tie it all together.
Hmm. And what is the cost for the program? And tell my listeners about their special discount.
Yes. So the program is $500. But for your mailing list, Luis, we have a special discount of $425 with a code that you'll share in the list. And I honestly can't remember it off the top of my head. So
it doesn't matter. This is the cliffhanger. Join my mailing list. You'll get all this
there we go.
information, and then you'll be able to join with a discount.
Yes, exactly.
I think it's so hilarious talk about theater because I was just talking to a friend before you decided to do this, months ago, and she was saying like, "Oh, I'm so not an AI person." And I said, "Oh, me too. Fuck that." And then I was sitting with them more, talking to you more, and realizing actually there's aspects to this I really adore and think should be discussed. And I always love the somatic piece, which is how do we relate to these things? What comes up subconsciously in our body that drives us toward it or away from it? Because if you don't like AI, just really know why you don't like it versus a reflexive response, then you're shut out from using it.
Because Luis, just to go like pull it all together, the reason I think this is so important, this class is important, this conversation is important, is because when you're grounded, you can help shape the conversation. When you're reflexive, we are going to lose an opportunity to bring really thoughtful, really creative minds to the conversation about how we could integrate this safely, ethically into our lives. So that's why I think the somatic piece and like the real understanding versus, just judging and shutting it down is so important.
Perfect ending. Thank you, my friend. So good
Oh
to
my
meet
God.
you.
Thank you, Luis. Yes, you too.
Thank you for watching today's episode. Please like and subscribe if you found it useful, and let me know in the comments what you want me to cover next. If you want to learn much more about nutrition, especially through the somatic lens and how you can use food to recover from stress and trauma, there's really no better time than now because I am about to lead a 6-month nutrition group that begins on July 8th. This group meets every week for 6 months, and I will teach you everything from somatic practices to help you be with the emotions that come up around dieting and food, as well as the nutritional biochemical component of protein, carbohydrates, fats, and how to understand instinctive eating in a way that nourishes your body instead of just soothing your emotions. When you bring somatic practices with nutritional ones, you get to eat for nourishment and then learn other ways to hold your emotions and tend to yourself instead of using food that could be detrimental to your health and your balance of your body. For more information about this group, please click on the link below in the episode details, and you have until July 7th to register. I look forward to seeing you in there. I have developed a 4-week self-paced course that takes 18 years of my personal and professional experience and puts it into one place where you can easily and quickly learn the foundations of recovering from stress and trauma. How does the food you eat affect your stress levels? How do the relationships in your life create stress or peace? How does the relationship you have with your body allow you to feel happier and more settled? I will cover all this and so much more in this 4-week self-paced course. And the best part, it's self-paced. You don't have to sign up at a certain date or finish it at a certain time. It's yours for life, and it's waiting there for you when you're ready to finish it. Throughout this course, I'll be teaching you philosophies and practices that combine my 3 favorite modalities: somatic experiencing, embodied parts work, and nutrition. For more information on this course, click on the link in my episode details.
Getting there, it was just, I could tell something special was about to happen.
There's just something about in-person retreats that just doesn't compare to online space.
Minla is outstandingly beautiful. Why not be there with Luis and his team?
My body knew that something intense was going to happen in the most beautiful way.
It was all about getting what each and every one of us needed and what the community needed.
My biggest takeaway is that I got introduced to myself.
We're just a bunch of misfits trying to find community with one another, and that's where my heart just blasted open because I felt like seen, and yeah, it was beautiful. I loved it.
Oh, and I forgot to mention something very important. I'm offering a $700 discount for anyone who registers before April 15th because this is our last US-based HLN team retreat until 2027. In 2026, we'll be doing this in Europe. So if you want to get in this year in upstate New York, in America, please visit holisticlifenavigation.com, click on events, find the retreat, and when you go to the registration page, make sure you type in the discount code HLN700. And as long as it's before April 15th, you get $700 off your entire purchase. So check the calendar right now, and if it's before April 15th, go register, enjoy the discount, and I cannot wait to see you there.